So here we are continuing our introduction to geometry assignment. We're going to work on angles this time. The last video was line segments, so if you missed that one, go back and watch the line segment addition postulate video. This one will be about the angle addition postulate. All right, the first thing that we want to understand is how to name an angle in 4 different ways, right? So one way to name an angle would be to use the angle symbol that looks like that. Okay, it's not the letter L, so we're not using it at a right angle like the letter L. We just have this little symbol that means angle, all right? Then next to that, we could put the name of the vertex of the angle. So this is one way to talk about an angle, all right? This point, all right, the part of the angle that comes to a point is called the vertex of the angle. So we can name an angle by calling the vertex of the angle, by calling it angle H. But this idea only works when we have only one angle at H, right? So this can be a problem if we have a situation like this, where I have a point named H, and then we see that there's 2 different angles, right? There's one angle on this side, and there's angle number 2 on this side, right? So they're totally different, right? They're not the same thing. So we want to understand that we can only use one letter. We can only use that in a case where it's very clear that there's only one angle that's described by that point. So in a case like this, we cannot do that, all right? So I'm not allowed to call either of these angles angle H, because there's 2 angles there, all right? So we'll go back and think about that more. Another way to call this angle would be to call it angle number 2, all right? So you probably are aware that angles are measured in degrees, right? And if I'm going to label an angle as 90 degrees, then we actually use the degrees symbol, all right? A lot of times in the videos, I'll put just like a little dot, and you'll see that I mean to put degrees right there, and I won't draw the whole circle. But you should understand that that's supposed to be a little circle. That's the symbol for degrees, right? So if that symbol is not there, sometimes from the context, it's clear that we're talking about degrees anyway, okay? But in a case like this, what we're doing is we're referring to this angle as angle number 2. So notice that there is not a degree symbol in this case. So if that degree symbol is not there, that's one way that the worksheets will refer to an angle, all right? So that we could call that angle angle number 2. So the next thing that we have to do to label an angle is we have to use 3 letters, all right? So I'm going to put some blanks up here, and we're going to talk about the way this works, okay? When we label an angle, the vertex has to be the letter in the middle. So if I want to label this angle right here that I have highlighted in red, to label that angle, I have to have H as the letter in the middle. And the other letters in the angle are going to be the ones that make the side of the angle. So the name of this angle right here would be GHI. Okay, that's the name of that angle. So we'll call it GHI. Okay. If I went the other way around, it would still describe the same angle. So if I call this IHG, we still have the same angle, okay? So those are 2 different names for the same angle, okay? So understand that these are 4 ways that we can name an angle. By using the vertex, right? By using a label, like if we call it angle number 1, angle number 2, or angle number 3 or something. The same way that I might number off my students as student number 1, student number 2, and student number 3. I'm not saying that student number 3 has a 3.0, right? I'm just saying that he is student number 3. And then we have to use 3 letters to label an angle like so. All right, so let's keep practicing this and make sure that the basics of talking about an angle are really clear. So for number 14, in this case, what we should have is a few things that make sense. We should have angle C. Okay, that's one way to call this angle. We could also call it angle phi. Okay, again, because there is no degree mark. So that means that that 5 is not trying to represent degrees. Okay, and then we could name it using 3 letters. And again, the vertex is C. So when I name this angle, all right, let's see if you guys can do this on your own right now. What letter should go in the middle? What letter am I going to put in the middle blank right here? Okay, that'll be the vertex of this angle. The vertex is C. So that means C goes in the middle. And then I'm going to have B, C, D on this part. And on the other side, we'll have D, C, B. and those describe the same angle. So this is the way we name an angle in 4 ways, right? You're going to have to do a couple of exercises to practice on your own. So if I was you, I'd pause the video and try number 15 right now. And now I'm going to give you guys the answer. So there we go. We should have angle H. We could have angle 2, angle IHG, and angle GHI. Now let's go try 16. Okay, one more try. So maybe you made a couple mistakes in the last one. Try to do this one again. See what you get for your angles. You should have these 4 ways. We could have angle I, we could have angle 3, we can have HIJ and JIH. So these are the ways we name that angle. Okay, for number 17 now we get to a problem that takes some understanding. So for this part, I'll jump into my presentation on the angle addition postulate. So the angle addition postulate is this idea, right? That if a point D is interior to an angle ABC, then that angle gets split into 2 angles, right? And if I add up those 2 angles, then I would get the whole angles measured, right? So that's all it's saying, right? ABD represents this angle right here, and DBC represents this angle on the bottom. And so the idea is if I add those 2 up, we get the whole angle. So the angle addition postulate will be what we're using, okay? So let's go back. So again, the angle addition postulate that we just saw, to use that on this problem, we're going to be following our steps for these problems all the time. All right, read, label, okay, label, and then 3 would be think, okay? And then last, when you get done with a math problem, you should check your work. If you got enough time, check your work, see if you got it right. So let's read the problem, all right? Step 1, let's read it. It says to find the measure of CJK. All right, so when I'm reading things, I like to go darken them so I know what I'm talking about. So CJK, all right, now I've darkened them and I can see it's in blue. So yeah, highlighters, that could help you sometimes too. All right, so I know I want to find that blue angle. That's what I want to find, okay? So this little M, all right, and that line, the way that we read this out loud is the measure of angle CJK, okay? And angles are measured in degrees, right? And this is something that we'll talk about more in another video about why is there degrees, and we'll talk about some of the history of this part of geometry. But in this one, we're just going to practice the math, the numbers side, the numeric side. So to find the measure of CJK, what we're going to have to do is use our angle addition postulate. So just keep that in mind. That's what that little symbol means with the little m. So what's going to happen now is we're going to continue our process of reading. I'm going to read this part. It says, if the measure of IJK is 156. Okay, so these 2 steps are almost one and the same, right? I could almost make number 1 read and label all at once, right? Because we have to read it and label it at the same time in a way. So IJK is 156. So let's do it in red. I, then I go to J, and then I go to K. All right, so that's the whole angle. The whole angle is 156. So because I'm doing all of it, I'm going to have these lines that kind of go around, these circular type of lines, and then we'll just put 156. So that's the whole angle. All right, we're still labeling because we're not done reading, right? If I go in here to this part, I can see that this angle IJC is equal to 90, right? So if colors help out, I could do another color, right? So we can see that this is green, all right, for IJC equal to 90. So if I go to I, and then J, and then C, okay, this angle would be 90 degrees. So the part that we want to find is our CJK. Okay, so we can go put an X for that if we want to go figure out what this is. All right. The idea of the angle addition postulate. Okay, first we're going to write it in the most complex way we could. Okay, so what we're going to do is add up the 2 pieces. All right, This one that's x is called angle CJK. All right? Then we have to add the other piece of the angle, right? And that's going to be CJI, or we can call it IJC is fine if we call it that too, okay? And then we're going to say that that's equal to the whole measure, right? And the whole angle, the big one, was called IJK. So okay, so this is our equation. Now that we have everything labeled, we've read the problem, now it's time to think. Okay, we know that this is true, right? If I add up the two pieces of an angle, I get the whole thing. So let's go put what the pieces are, okay? CJK is equal to x, so we'll put x. IJC is equal to 90. As you can see, we did that in the green, right? So maybe it'll help if I do that in green right now. Okay, so plus 90, okay, because that's that part. Okay, but this is all equal to IJK, and IJK is 156. All right, so I guess the one thing that's not working with the colors is that I did this X in blue, so I guess I can go put that in blue so you can see it. All right, so now we think, okay, what number plus 90 is going to give me 156? Okay, so never just blindly subtract and add. Instead of doing that, make sure that you think about what would make sense here, right? We want a number that if I add 90 to it, I get 156. So we could do the algebra, subtract 90 from both sides. Now if you do that, we're going to get x equals 66. Okay, and that's degrees. Okay, every now and then you'll notice I'm not putting the degrees every time, but just understand it should be there. Okay, so now we get x equals 66. And that is complete, okay, because we now know that the measure of CJK is that, is 66. So if we wanted to, I guess we could write one more thing. Okay, but the main idea is that you understand where should I put that 66? I should put that right here, okay? So we did the thinking, right? We went through and thought about what we had to do. We figured, okay, I need to subtract so that I could figure out the missing piece, right? To check our work, the only way to really double check this work is to make sure that when you added up these numbers, they actually make what we need to. Okay, so just double check your work. Another way to double check your work is to ensure that you actually answered the question that it wanted you to. Okay, so go back and read the question one more time. It said to find CJK, and look what we found. We found CJK. Okay, so I made that problem take kind of a long time on purpose. You want to talk about all of the details. Okay. But there's other ways to do them. Instead of putting all the details down, we could read label things. So let's try read label things this time. All right. So we see NIH is 55. So I could go write NIH and put a 55 in there. All right. But down here I got JIN is 95. So JIN, that's 95. Okay. Then it tells us to find the measure of JIH. So I guess the first thing I could do is write that and leave a place that I could put it, okay? But now maybe we could realize that the measure of JIH should be equal to the sum of the two pieces of the angle, right? Because I have those two pieces. So if I was to do the measure of JIN plus the measure of NIH, then I would have exactly what I need, right? Now, if we substitute everything in, we'll be all right. Okay, the only things that I can really change are the ones on the right, though, because JIN is 95 and NIH is 55. So if we add those up, we can get our final answer, right? So represent that, put that on the table, and understand that you read, you label, and then you think. You don't just add up two numbers, right? You have to make sure that that is something that makes sense to do. So don't hesitate too much, all right, but make sure that you're thinking about the question that you actually have to answer every time, right? So we should add these up, and we get 145, okay? And we can move on to the next problem, right? Okay, so number 19, we're getting to a place where you guys can start to try on your own, okay? But I'm going to do this last one So we'll label. Okay, GCD is 60, right? So we read and we label. That's GCD, right? GCD. All right, I know I'm right now. BCG is 99, so that's B, and then C, and then G, so that's 99, so we put 99 right there, okay? And then it tells us to find BCD, all right? But we know the measure of BCD is equal to what I get if I add up the two pieces, okay? So the two pieces are BCG plus DCG, right? Or in this case, they call it GCD. So I'm going to use the same name that they have up here, all right? So anyway, BCD will be equal to what I get when I add up these two. So BCG, I'll write that in blue. All right, that's 99. And then GCD, I'll write in red, that's 60. Okay, so you can add those up, and you could get 159 degrees. Okay, we're getting to a place where you guys are going to practice on your own now. So let's try number 20. That's for you. Okay, pause the video, scratch it out, do it in your head, come up with something. All right, the answer you should have got for number 20 is 168. Okay, so in this case, we would have been adding these two, so we'd be combining the two pieces to make the whole angle, which is STU. All right, 21. Okay, it tells you to find IHJ. So IHJ is one of the pieces. So since I have to find a piece of the angle, I'm probably going to end up subtracting. All right, we see we got 32, right? So this means that 32 plus 140, right, JHG, if I add those two up, I should get 172. So notice when I'm looking for a piece of the angle, it looks like I'll probably have to subtract, okay? And when I'm looking for the whole angle, I have to add up the two pieces. So the one thing you want to do is figure out what is it that I'm looking for. All right, in this case it says ABN. So I'm looking for ABN, all right, well that's one of the pieces of the whole angle, right? Well, so that means I'll probably have to subtract, right? 164 minus 140 gives me 24. And if I have 24 and 140, those add up to 164. Okay, so the answer you should have got for 22 is 24. Now 23, all right, pause this one, see if you get an answer on your own. All right, seriously, pause it and try it on your own, right? Okay, the answer that you got, I hope you got 40. All right, it looks like here, again, we had to subtract 35 from 75. So 75 minus 35 makes 40, and those two pieces will add up to 24 like they should. All right, the last one right here, it says to find DEP, and that is one of the pieces. So like we've seen, DEF is the whole angle, so that means I'm going to have to subtract these two so that I can figure out what would be left over. All right, so if we do that subtraction, you're going to end up with 29. All right, so good work making it to the end of this video. Again, this was just reviewing the introduction to angle addition postulate. This is a good place to begin if you missed some days of school. All right, so stay posted on the rest of the geometry videos, and good luck studying.